So we started in the industry in 1889. My great-grandfather came over from Greece and did not speak the language. He was a pharmacist. So for some reason, he and my great-grandmother, Margaret, decided to get into the floral industry. They were very successful in the Wall Street area and then proceeded to move down to Greenpoint, where again they were as successful. And they had one son who had three sons, and each son ended up going into a different direction and opening up a florist. My father chose Long Beach, thank the Lord. My uncle Chris was in New York City, and my other uncle George was in Richmond Hill. So that being said, my grandfather first started as a cart in front of the train station. There was another gentleman who had set up, and they became partners, but the other gentleman decided quickly that he wanted to move on and he didn't want to be there. So my grandfather stayed there for maybe about a year and a half, and then the property came up for sale across the street, which was next to Stewie and Joyce. We were neighbors for many, many years. So about 1951-52, they bought the building and established Lascaux Flowers in that building. We remained there till 2004. I am a fourth generation florist. I have now trained my daughter, who is the fifth generation, with COVID and whatnot. And at first we tried Island Park, but Long Beach people don't like to go over. Nobody wants to do that. And they would say, why are you over there? So I happened to have one of the big historical homes down on Penn Street, and it had a huge garage. And my husband said to me, you're throwing the money out the window. You know, everybody calls you, you have a presence, you don't even have to have a brick and mortar to operate. So we ended up setting up in the garage. We've been there for about 14 years now. And, you know, I consider myself COVID before COVID happened, because everybody used to get she's out of her house. But now everybody's like, oh, just go down the driveway. She's off the great floors there, you know. But most people just call anyway, because they know our work. With wonderful technology of today, we have an Instagram page, we have a website, so everybody sees our work constantly, and really it speaks for itself. And that's it. And living in, you know, having a business on Park Street, you know, we had Stewie and Joy, we had the Weinbergs, we had Mr. Sports, we had the Radens, you know, who had all seasons. Ship Ahoy, my favorite breakfast place. That was my go-to egg sandwich in the morning. It was a very close community of merchants, and I think we had a beautiful street. Everybody got out there, and we swept our storefronts. We made sure that it looked beautiful. Our windows, holiday decorating, and just it was a fabulous time with a lot of fun people that were local merchants and everybody getting along, and really never an argument, nothing. But it was very sad as we each one decided when to close down. It was sad to watch because so many of us have been in this town for so long, you know. As of now, I'm working on 60 years, so it's, you know, it's a long time to be here, but I love this town. And I have dual citizenship, one point look out for business. So, you know, and, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful town to have business, it really is.
Janine, talk about your family a little bit, your father, your mom, and you know.
Well, my father was the one who came into the store here in Long Beach and chose that. Eventually my father got sick and was told he really shouldn't be working too much. So my mother, well actually it was my father and my grandmother. And then my grandmother wanted to retire. She retired at 83, but my mother took over the business, and she took it to a different realm. Then they were just flowers, and my mother got into interior design. She had a very good eye, so there was a lot of the window always looked like something out of Fifth Avenue during holiday time. I mean, we remember one time she brought in these carousel horses with these beautiful dolls on. And at the time, they were retailing for about $1,000, and my sister and I were just like, she's crazy. What does she think is going to buy these things? she's like, they will come. And, you know, the way she did the window was magnificent, and truthfully, she sold it out 3 times, and we were like, okay, who knew? You know, that people wanted these beautiful dolls on carousel horses, but I think that was the thing that I missed the most, not having a storefront. I used to love to watch the little kids at Halloween time when we do our Halloween windows or our Christmas and Hanukkah windows. The kids with their, you know, faces up against the glass looking at things and saying, oh, I want that, or I want that, you know. You missed that part of the interaction. We were also the coffee clutch place, you know, like people would just wander in. We always had a pot of coffee on, and, you know. Might not buy flowers, but they came in for the cup of coffee and chit chat, you know, and just, you know, say hello and tell us what was going on in their lives. That is probably the biggest part that I think I missed the most, is seeing all the people that you know in the town and having them just wander in, you know. We had a desk, and it would be funny, people would come in from Geno's with their pizza, do you mind? I'm thinking I can say hello, you know. They'd sit at the desk and eat their pizza and talk to us, you know, while we worked, so. It was a wonderful time, and that's the biggest part of what I miss on having a storefront.
Since I am the oldest person in this room, you all have to listen to me and take orders, right?
Absolutely.
I wasn't born in Long Beach, but as a child, we lived in the Bronx, and we used to take the ferry across and come to the beach every Sunday. From our Italian family, I'm Italian, we would have big picnics under the boardwalk. They would bring everything in pots and pans. I don't know how we didn't go into the water and not sink down. That's how wonderful it was. And then I married a man whose father had Duffy's liquor store in the West End. Now, he wasn't Irish. He was a Jewish person with an Irish store, and that's how we got here in Long Beach. And while I was visiting my mother-in-law, they were opening up the barracks in Lido Beach for veterans. So we had a little apartment there, and it was just wonderful. So the beach was always in my heart, and I was very active with children. So I had the Girl Scout troop taking care of the special needs children, and I was a lifeguard in the pool with Harvey Wiesenberg. And one day we had a problem in the pool, and a little boy jumped in and he wasn't coming up. And I said to Harvey, he's not coming. He says, eventually he'll come up. I mean, that was my, you know, eventually he'll come up. But I jumped in and pulled him up. I said, I can't wait so So I live at Lido Beach, and then we bought a house there. But I've been very active in the when we had the bowling center, do you remember?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And why they turned it down, why they tore it down, is a sin. And I don't want to talk about it, because I'd have to tell you who did it and what happened. But we had a wonderful center there. Yet it was a split level, if some of you people don't know, a split level bowling center. And it was just wonderful for everyone. And, but they were going to bring gambling to Long Beach. So everything on that street went down. And it's there. You know, you can't blame people for what they did, but they did the wrong thing. We still would have had the center there. And I work with special needs children all my life, and that's good. And what else? I'm alive, I'm kicking. I'm 99, going on 100.
Doesn't she look great?
Could you believe it? I'm 99 going on 100. So you can do it. Don't think of your age, just do everything you want to do today. Whatever dreams you have, do it. Don't say, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Do it now. Because life is like this. right, I love you all, and thank you so much for having me.
My family came here, my mother's family, the Kops, came in 1931 during the Depression. They bought a house, a two-story brick house in the West End for $900.
Wow.
And that was my mother's side. And then Erwin Kopp had started with a little, after the war, he had a grocery store on the last block. And interestingly, in doing this, I realized he married, at that time, there was a grocery store on every other block in the West End. Almost every wide block had a little grocery. And Erwin married, his wife had a store on Kentucky. And that was Grace Kopp. And then my mother was Phyllis, and Dr. Morty Kopp, and then they had a younger brother, Stephen Kopp. But as far as Echo goes, my great-great-great-great-grandfather had a print shop in England, and for 3 generations. Then they moved to the Bronx and had a print shop, and then when they moved to Island Park, and my father and his brother and his father, they printed the Island Park Echo, which I brought some samples if anyone wants to look at. And it's interesting, there's still, if you look carefully, there's still some stuff in here. This is from 1941, mentions people or businesses that are still around. I'll have these out if anybody wants to look later. And after the war, in 1950, he opened a print shop at 60 West Park Avenue, next to Temple Israel, and it was just a print shop. 2 years later, he took in a partner, Lester Lewin, and they opened up Echo Printing Stationery, and that was at 70 West Park. Later became Kokomo's. I have a picture here. And in 1970, Lester Lewin left, and he moved to 30 West Park, which what was the first post office in Long Beach, the building. And we gutted the building, and then he opened up a bigger store. And anytime we meet anybody from Long Beach, we always say, oh, I used to get my school supplies. I remember the first day of school was a big deal. And we were there a long time. We did printing, then we developed another business called Echo Appellate Press, where we did legal printing. And it happens that Barbara actually, there's 2 people here who worked at Echo one time or another. Sheldon. This is an interesting picture, which I'll leave all this stuff out later. When they tore down the building next to us, it had a fire lit. There was a sign on our wall. It said, English Oval cigarettes, 20 for 25 cents. And it was a beautiful, really nice mural. I had pictures of Echo as it was. And basically, like Janine said, it was great. The block was great. Everyone was friendly. The customers were friendly. We all went in and out of each other's stores. And
Now I have something to add.
okay. Don't you always?
Sometimes. I worked at Bags by Mimi for a few years and learned a lot about retail sales. When Stewie and his parents were at Echo, I decided we had to do something different besides loose leaf paper and paper clips. So I brought a boutique, kind of a boutique,
Gifts.
yeah, all kinds of gifts, all kinds of stuffed animals, or whatever you would want to give as a gift, but better. And I used to go into the city every week, downtown to the Koreans, that's where everything was. And I started out with a strip of 12 bricks. That's how I was testing my customers. They were gone in 2 days. So I knew there were people out there that wanted more than a Parker refill or reinforcements. So I built up the front of the store so that a lot of people came in just to look for gifts. And then, of course, they went down the aisle to the paper first. I was very proud of what I did. I had a window dresser come in. So Stewie's mom was still working, but she was getting tired and she really didn't want to work anymore. So that's when I came into the business. And I have to say, she was the most wonderful woman in the whole world to deal with. I'll just put in an aside. My father was in the same business, but in Manhattan. So one stationer married the other stationer, and that's how we got together.
My dad was a caterer in Long Beach for many years in the Shore Country Club, which was Atlantic Beach Day Camp, and in the Malibu and the Coral Reef and the Colony. So I kind of grew up as a working kid my whole life. We all worked. In the summers we worked in when it was Beach Club. When I got old enough, I was a cashier. I used to be the hat check girl at all my dad's affairs. So we kind of grew up in that business. I married a Long Beach boy. My family came to Long Beach originally in 1935. They lived in the Bronx. They used to rent bungalows down in the West End. At one time, they rented an apartment in 110 Grand Boulevard, which happened to be around the corner from our first home. They left during the war. My dad was in the war and was overseas in World War II. But after the war, my parents had a aunt and uncle who were very well-to-do, and they lived in the city. And they bought a house on West Penn Street in Long Beach. They had no children. My mother was the oldest of all their nieces and nephews. There were 9 children of her aunts and uncles. And they wanted my parents to move to Long Beach, so they bought the house next door to them for my parents. It was $18,000 in 1949. That's where I was born. I lived there for many, many years. I met a really nice guy at my, I had a friend whose mom was a big mahjong player. And she had a party one day in her yard, and her mahjong pals came with their children, and that's where I met my husband. I was 10, he was 12. Of course, we didn't have too much to do with each other for the next few years, but we kind of hooked up at Long Beach High School, at a basketball game, and then we went to Beach Burger afterwards. If all you Long Beach people remember, we used to go on at Beach Burger. We used to have Friday night basketball games. And after the basketball games, we went to Beach Burger, which is now Diner by the Sea. They used to lock the doors because there was such an overflow of kids that cops would come and make them take people out. So we'd wait online to get in the door. And that's when my husband asked me on our first date, which we went to the Laurel movies and then to Jan's. So we got married, I was just, I guess, a senior in college. A couple of years later, he went to Vietnam, he was in the Air Force, all kinds of to-do. I was a young mother. He came home, he went to work in the garment center, which lots of people in Long Beach went to work in the garment center for friends of all of ours. I was a young mom at home, and I really wanted to go back to work. My dad had passed away. I used to work for my dad on the weekends in the catering business. And I was sitting in Stewie's brother's house on Neptune Boulevard, an apartment they're renting, and Susan, his wife, made us this wonderful gourmet dinner, which she learned how to make from Roz Wasserstrom. I don't know if anybody of you remember. And I'm whining, and I'm saying, oh, I'm dying to get back to work. Maybe I'll put the little one in nursery school. So his brother, who's an attorney, said, you a good typist? I said, Jay, you know I'm a good typist. He says, well, come to my office in Mineola. Let's see if the girls can teach you some legal stuff. So I said, okay. My son was already in e-school, put my daughter in nursery school, and Jay said, come to work for me for two days a week. I said, fine. That lasted 1 week. And then I worked full time in Mineola. His girls taught me. It was really great. Stewie, in the meantime, opened up an appellate press business. If any of you know, when you make a legal appeal, you have to print the whole original case. So Stewie had an attorney who worked for him, and he needed somebody who knew how to be a good typist. We didn't have computers in those days. So Stewie asked me to come to work a few days a week in Echo. That lasted a few weeks, and then I worked full-time in Echo, which I loved because I was near my kids, I was home. It was a wonderful thing. In the interim, my husband was kind of getting upset about the garment center. A lot of stuff happened. And my brother, who lives in Westchester, had a dry cleaning store in Manhattan and another one in Armonk, New York. And he said to my husband, come work for me, you'll learn the business, and then we'll buy another store and you'll run that store. So this all was very nice. This went on for a couple of months. And I was sitting in the back where we used to do all our work in Echo up on the platform. And Stewie's darling father, Harold, comes over to me and he says, you know, I think they want to sell that dry cleaning store up in the East End. Why don't you, his name was Danny Snyder, why don't you and Howie go over and talk to him? So he said, take off, go tell Howie to come home, go talk to him tomorrow. So we went up to talk to him, and he says, why don't you come to work for me? And then we'll talk about buying the store. Meanwhile, he had a partner, his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law, they had a row with a truck, and his brother-in-law broke his leg promptly the next day that my husband went to work there. So this went on for about 6 months. And then Howie said, listen, Danny, you know, we have a deal. You said you're going to sell me the store. Let's see what we can do. So we made arrangements. We mortgaged our house. And that's how we bought Fashion Cleaners. That was in 1979. We were supposed to have a partner. That fell through. So I left my wonderful Echo family to learn the dry cleaning business with my husband. So we bought it in 1979. I brought my kids up there. They went to East School right around the corner. We redid our store. I made them desks in the back. We worked really hard. It was a wonderful business for a long time. My husband was in his glory. He was like the mayor of East Park Avenue. It was also just like on your block. Everybody was friends. It was such a lovely atmosphere. Everybody was out in the morning sweeping and having coffee at Bell's or having John's home fries at the Cozy Nook with Morgan Coffee. But it was really, it was a very nice atmosphere. We worked really hard, 6 days a week, from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. It's a very grueling, very physical business. But we were with our kids all the time. We were with our kids more than other parents who went to work all day long and didn't see their kids until they came home. I could chauffeur them all over the place. It was really a wonderful thing. In the last few years, my husband was ill and had to retire at a really young age. My son was in college. He left college and came home to help me because it's very physical. Honest and truly, you need a man to help you work in that business. One of the people who work for you, as Alan can attest to, I'm sure, are sometimes not the greatest people in the world.
I need a woman, I don't need a man.
A lot of the fellows and people who are pressers have some dubious backgrounds, and you never know if they came to work the next day. So we kind of learned everything. Alan can tell you, he's still in it. There was enough business in Long Beach for everybody. It was really good. I did leave the business in the 90s. I felt very guilty. We needed new machinery. Business wasn't so great in those days. And honest and truly, I didn't want my son to have his head in the dry cleaning machine for all the years. Chemicals are different now. They're better than they used to be. But there were two people who owned the store before we did, and both of those men died from cancer. And my husband was not well, and I didn't want my son in the same boat. So I left the business. I still am working, but I have very fond memories. We had a wonderful 15 years in Fashion Clean. It was great. David Lois knows. David helped us too. He knows that. It was really, it was a wonderful atmosphere. And now it's part of Lido Deli. Every time I walk in, I say to Holly, I'm in my store.
We've been in, at Laurel Cleaners, on the corner of Park and Laurelton for 60 years. We've been there over 60 years. Yeah, too long. I know what Barbara was saying, I never expected it, I grew up in that store. When my dad opened it, when my parents opened it, I was 5, 6 years old, and back then we didn't have babysitters. I would go to school at Magnolia School, which was Central School. So after Central School, I would go back to the store and help my parents in the store, help my parents. I just didn't play in the street. When my dad left the store, though, they went through Whitbread, and we got the lumber and everything needed that when my dad opened the store. So we go back long, long ways. Going to school here, being raised here, it's Michael, the lawyer, if everyone knows Michael. Michael and I went to kindergarten together. We both had hair back then. And Mike's family, if you didn't know it, owned Shines in the West End, which I never went to until his victory night when he won the election. It was the first time I walked into Shines and everyone knew me, and it's like I'd never been here. But that was the first time I walked into Shines, was that night. But my parents opened in, like I said, 1963. I did not expect to still be there. I went away, I escaped for a few years. I went to school in Las Vegas, I lived in Las Vegas. I had a different career for the time, and it took my mom to get sick for me to come back, thinking I'll be here for a little bit, and took a leave of absence where I was working, and I'm still here. But it ends with me. My kids do not want the business. They do help us. I have 2 girls. My older one's a teacher. My younger one is a therapist. They come into the store and help, but they are not going to take over the store. I can't see it. I hope they don't. Barbara said it's a hard business, getting help, and where you said you needed a guy, I need women to run the store so I can leave. But it's tough, and Barbara would know. We're there from 7 to 7 every single day. I don't take vacation. We don't close. My vacation is Sundays. That's my vacation over the last couple of years. It took Sandy for us not to go there for a while. What Joni said about the Lions Club with your great-grandfather, how that happened was, like 20 years ago, my wife was involved with Girl Scouts locally. She ran the cookie program here in town, Island Park. Go and look out, it's one troop. It's one troop. It's not, but it's one area, I guess. And she ran the cookies, and I always bitched about it, and she said, so get involved. So I went to the Kiwanis Club first, and they weren't doing much of anything back then. And we had a customer that said, come to the Lions Club. And it's like, all right, I'll get a customer or two. That was my thinking back then. I'll get a customer or two. And I'm the president now of the Lions Club. How long am I? I'm waiting for Michael to take over, but he doesn't want to. But what's that?
You've been there a long time.
I've been a long time, and so if anyone wants to join the Lions, we need new people. You could be president. You could be president. We get involved a lot in the store. We sponsor a lot of teams. Whenever someone comes in, we never say no. We never say no. We always do, especially when it comes to local. But that's what we do. We've been there a long time. I don't plan on going anywhere unless someone walks in and makes a great offer. They haven't yet, but we're still there.
Okay, I have a book, so I had to remember everything I have to say. So, I'm going to tell you the stories about my family and our family business, Whitbread Lumber. I have been a member of the Long Beach Historical Society since 1983, including almost 25 years as a board member, so it's a pleasure to be here tonight. In the early 1900s, my grandfather, George Whitbread, started a lumber business located along Reynolds Channel between Magnolia and National Boulevards.
This was an appropriate location in those days because lumber used to be shipped by barges. The location was also suitable because it was near the spurs of the railroad, and lumber and other products were shipped by rail. Like many others, our family had a winter home in Woodhaven and a summer home in Long Beach, on Beach Street. In the 20s, the family moved permanently into one of the two houses built on West Penn across from St. Ignatius, which later became the convent. The children attended Long Beach schools and helped their father in the business. The family was involved with the church over the years. Our Uncle Tom was coach for CYO basketball. Uncle Bill and our cousin Loretta were trustees of the church, and our Aunt Ruth was highly involved in the Legion of Mary and visiting those people in the nursing home. My grandfather was one of the charter members of the Lions Club, and how I found that out was because of my friend Alan. He was also involved in Long Beach politics, a founding member of the National Bank of Long Beach, a director of the Long Island Association, and the Anti-Pollution League of America, which was formed in the 1940s to fight pollution of the Long Beach shoreline, a man ahead of his time. My grandfather was a businessman. At one time, a manager of 5 lumber yards across Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. Besides the location on the bay, in the mid-20s, a store or an annex in the West End, possibly near Wisconsin Street, was opened. There were other companies near us along the bay, including a mattress company, which had a fire which spread to the lumberyard. It was devastating to our family and our employees. It was also during the era of the Depression, so with much money, much energy, and little money, what could be saved was moved to our present location. My dad, George, his brothers and sisters, and employees worked very hard to rebuild the business, which of course was not easy during the Depression days. To help support the family, my grandfather built a driving range and miniature golf next to the family home on West Penn and Grand Boulevard. And I have a picture showing it. Just as we remember Superstorm Sandy, many remember the hurricane of 1938, which also caused great destruction. Fortunately, the business and the family homes were okay. Of course, the early days, the West End was mostly sand, so products were delivered by wagon. Now I can introduce the 2 stars of these wagon deliveries. The 2 horses that took care of the work, Sam Horse and Pete Horse. The names are important. I always get a laugh that you could never say Sam the Horse or Pete the Horse. They did not respond to these names. My Uncle Bill shared this special story with us. Then came World War II. My dad, my Uncle Bill, and my Aunt Rita enlisted in the Navy. My 3 uncles on my mother's side also served as well, and of course they lived down the block on Penn Street from my father's family. Our dad, the oldest brother, served in the Seabeats. Quite appropriate, because they were the building and construction arm of the Navy. They were the state-of-the-art on all equipment and methods used in building. Not long after training started, Dad's day was made when they introduced to him the lift truck. He could not wait to share this information with his brother Edward, who was at that time in Long Beach running the business, along with our grandfather and my 2 aunts, Ruth and Maud, which was very unusual because women weren't involved in the industry at that time. We saved and invested in a lift truck, and were one of the first lumber yards to have such an important addition to our fleet. I would like to say a few words about the experience of my Uncle Bill in the war when he was a dirigible pilot along the coast of the United States and South America. And just as an aside, when we visited him in Florida many years ago, at a restaurant, he started a conversation with a gentleman, only to find out that he also flew an airship. And lo and behold, they had a special handshake. It was amazing. During the war, the lumberyard was on Magnolia between West Pine and West Fulton, where it is now. Next to the property on West Pine, there was a warehouse, which we eventually purchased. It had a history of its own. We know that the first company to use it was Connor Brothers, street builders in Long Beach. After they left, it became a riding academy and a stable for horses. We just recently uncovered a few horseshoes. I'm going to ask my sister June to show you an original horseshoe.
Cool. Huge.
And it's very big. I never realized that these horses that worked must have been very big horses to carry the loads and strong. They must be like the Budweiser horses when you see them on television. Roberta Fiore, our esteemed historian, shared that Will Rogers may have kept his horse there on his visits to Long Beach, as well as other celebrities. With World War II ending and soldiers returning home, the building of homes started to help everyone recover. We were able to bring in new products to meet the demand. In 1949, a family expanded the business, opening the store in Oceanside on Long Beach Road. It was there for over 74 years, and we recently closed it. In the 1950s, the yard was closed on Saturdays at noontime. This was when truck maintenance, preparation for deliveries, and cleanup was done. This was also the day that the third generation started to make their appearance and get their feet wet. This included several cousins and my siblings. The greatest part for the children was going out for breakfast and lunch. And visiting a restaurant at the foot of Magnolia called Doremus's that was on a barge. It was in the location now of the Magnolia Pier. Other places that were frequented were the Penguin, Mills Chat and Shoe, Lenny's Steakhouse, and the Laurel Luncheonette. Besides selling lumber, many skilled craftsmen built windows, doors, moldings at the company. I remember cabinet makers Martin Drews and Gus Beckman. By the time I met them, the small millwork workshop they had been moved to the corner of Magnolia and West Fulton. All I can remember at the time was them making rocking chairs in between cabinet making. As Long Beach is known for its ice skating, also in the 50s, my Uncle Ed was involved in the Recreation Commission, and he and my dad started to freeze the parking lots at the railroad station for ice skating for the children, which grew from the parking lot to an actual outdoor skating rink in the location near the Long Beach Arena now. As the business grew, we purchased the property on the other side of the warehouse and started to sell mason's supplies in addition to the many lumber and building products we already sold. In 1985, the third generation, consisting of my brothers and sisters, joined our father in running both companies. Our Uncle Ed had passed, and Uncles Tom and Bill retired. During the years, we have supplied many homes and projects in Long Beach. We were able to provide assistance to the community during the Superstorm Sandy. Homeland Security had set up their headquarters across from us in the parking lot of the senior center. Right at the beginning, they needed assistance in receiving emergency items. My brother Greg made himself available day and night with the lift truck to assist unloading materials. We were also fortunate to have an old-style gas pump, as it was a problem for the city to fuel the vehicles. Something had happened to the city pumps. This little item was very helpful. Our yard was affected by the storm. Skids of lumber were moved by water. Much material was lost. It was also a challenge to get material to help support recovery. We opened right away to be ready to help our neighbors and our city. It was a very emotional time for everyone. Everyone lost so much. I would be remiss if I did not mention our employees. Business does not work without these wonderful people. Of course, I cannot mention all their names, but members of our family and fellow employees, Helen Sengers, Arthur Sandberg, affectionately known as Sandy, Tito Squio, and Vincent Dane, were all very important to us. The fourth generation is our niece Christine, who is our tech support and overall helper. Over the years, the business has supported numerous Little League teams, including the special needs team, PERB, schools, temples, and churches. Now we are working on another challenge, recovering from a devastating fire in January. Thank God no one was severely injured. We are grateful for the considerable work of the Long Beach Fire Department, the police department, and all the others who responded. We are still open and selling materials from our mobile office and always can be reached by phone. We will be forever grateful for all the kindness, thoughtful words, and support given us by the community of Long Beach during these past months.
Thank you.